Good evening and a very big welcome to this exciting event, the launch of the story of Indigo, the power of community-led development. I look forward to a marvellous evening. First, I'd like to acknowledge that we're here today on the land of many peoples. I join you tonight from the land of the Gadigal and Bidjigal peoples, who traditionally occupied Sydney on the east coast, though I was actually born on the land of the Noongar people who occupied the coastal land around Perth on the west coast. Many others of you, I think, Alex, joined from the land of the Ngunnawal people, and I'm sure there are many more traditional owners we should acknowledge. I encourage you to share this using the chat function. On behalf of all of us, I acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people attending today. On behalf of the Indigo Foundation, I pay my respect to the elders of all these lands, past and present and emerging, and I acknowledge their continuing relation to their ancestral lands. Now it's my huge pleasure to introduce a most wonderful friend, both a personal friend and a great friend of the Indigo Foundation. Alex Sloan is known, loved and admired by many of us at Indigo. Alex is a communications specialist and an award-winning journalist whose extensive media career spanned more than 30 years, including 27 years with ABC Radio. So many of us remember and enjoyed Alex hosting the always interesting afternoon show on ABC Canberra. Year after year, Alex helped us promote our fundraising events in Canberra on that program. We are also most grateful that over many years, Alex has also hosted and co-hosted many of Indigo's fundraising events and dinners in Canberra. We're so proud that Alex was our 2017 ACT Citizen of the Year. And in 2019, Alex was made a member of the Order of Australia. Now Alex is Deputy Chair of the Australia Institute, Director of the Winston Churchill Memorial Trust, and Deputy Chair of the ACT Writers Centre, and a million other things, not to mention cook extraordinaire. Alex is one of Indigo's most special friends, and it's a great joy to pass over now to Alex to launch a record of our prized history, a record of Indigo's first 20 years. Thank you, dear Alex, and to all joining us tonight. Now, please unmute yourselves and welcome Alex with a very big old-fashioned hand clap. Alex?
Libby Lloyd AM, one of our most incredible leaders and women. And yes, it was Libby that introduced me to Indigo, and I feel so privileged now to be part of the family. And having done a bit of work with Auntie Pat Anderson and Megan Davis this year, I just wanted to acknowledge on Ngunnawal, and I personally am so thrilled that I was born and raised on a country that boasts the oldest continuous living culture on earth. I still pinch myself when I think about that. I've only been treated with generosity, kindness and respect by First Nations people. And I hope that we can soon vote yes in a referendum on a constitutionally enshrined voice to Parliament as requested by the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And look, I have learned so much coming along to the Indigo dinners and doing the interviews on radio about the work that Indigo does around the world. And, you know, about the need, about what it means to a community to be supported, particularly through the power of community-led development. Now, Indigo was the idea of Sally Stevenson, and Sally is with us tonight, and we just really want to acknowledge that sometimes it just takes one person to change the world, and Sally, you certainly have done that. As you'll read in this book, I've got the only copy, by the way, but there's soon going to be many copies. As you read in the book, Sally was deeply disappointed and frustrated with the inherently disrespectful and controlling and ultimately, in the end, ineffectual ways some of the world's aid agencies worked. So she joined forces with other like-minded women to set up their own organisation. They had then, and they still have now, a belief that it is possible to take a more dynamic, creative and innovative response to international development. That is, where local community partners are trusted to decide and lead their own developments, supported through long-term partnerships. 20 years on, Indigo still holds true to these aspirations and guidelines, to the fundamental belief that it is communities that are best placed to understand and act on their own development priorities. In these 20 years, the Indigo Foundation has supported 27 partnerships in 15 countries, with the longest partnerships lasting between 15 and 20 years. And I think I can point to partnerships in Afghanistan and Rotate in Indonesia. And I am really thrilled to see the first 20 years of Indigo's history celebrated in this way. It's easy, you know, to lose a lot of history and information just by doing things. So it's fantastic that this book has been produced. Look, it's really easy, isn't it, to rant and rail and want the world to be a better place. We are in that kind of moment, I think. And gee, you might even want to send out an explosive tweet or Facebook post, but instead, the Indigo founders got active and organised. They tapped into willing supporters, talked to communities, made enduring relationships and ongoing lasting, and basically have helped. They have really done something and they continue to do it. And I think in my book and in anyone's book, that is really something to celebrate. And so it is my joyous job this evening to officially launch this book, The Power of Community-Led Development, 20 Years of the Indigo Foundation. I want you to buy multiple copies. This is good and inspiring content, and goodness knows, we could do with an uplifting read at the moment. And I want to now open up to our incredible panel and people participating. I think we've got over 40 people this evening with us, and I welcome you all and say thank you for your support and your ongoing support. And I'm going to go first now to Jenny Noble. And Jenny is one of the very early contributors to Indigo and was project coordinator for a partnership with Centro Feto Women's Centre in Timor-Leste from 2002 to 2005. And again, I'm just going to acknowledge Sally Stevenson, as I said, who's in the audience, as well as Zoe Manda-Jones and Pat Duggan, who were there at the early stages of Indigo. If you want to all unmute and give them a clap at this moment, let's do that before we just go to Jenny. Apparently these women's led movers, these voices for, is a bit of a thing these days. But you were there 20 years before. So, Jenny, if I can now go to you, can you share briefly some of the story of how Indigo did start, the ideas behind it, and how it got its name?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on the panel today. So I'm Jenny Noble, and I wanted to again acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, and also to pay my respects to all of you fantastic people, supporters of Indigo Foundation, some of you for a very long time. So I'm really happy to be here today. I have to say I have made some notes because I was reading the book today in preparation for the launch, and I was a little bit overcome with emotion, like happy emotion, about the enormous amount of work that Indigo has been able to achieve, and really also for me the wonderful friendships that it's fostered amongst us as Indigo supporters here in Australia, and obviously amongst the different programs that we have in so many countries today. I'm also really thankful to Indigo for what it's brought to me in terms of experience and lessons in international development. I use these in my career 20 years later down the track. Certainly I grew up in development based on my experiences in Indigo Foundation. So I joined IF, and I continue to say IF rather than Indigo, in 2000 after I was invited to come along to a meeting by Zoe Manda-Jones, who I was working with at AusAid at the time. I was really interested to get the opportunity to be involved in a brand new organisation. That doesn't happen very often, a financially independent organisation, independent for government. And it was run by these really inspiring and dynamic women who welcomed me and my inexperience with open arms. It was a really fantastic time, and I really enjoyed the management committee meetings and the opportunity to contribute to building a new organisation from the ground, always applying IF's guiding principles of community ownership, sustainability, transparency and equity. I'd say these guiding principles have really stood this test of time. They're right up the front of the publication, which you can all see when you read it, and they're probably even more relevant today than they were at the beginning. What I would say, I guess, is it wasn't all fun and games, though. It was really, really hard work. Volunteering is rewarding, but it's really hard work. And at these times, I remember reflecting on IF's name to get me through. It kept me motivated. If only we could do something different. If only we could work with communities in a really different way to the way other organisations were at the time. If only we could establish ourselves as a credible, self-supporting, long-term NGO. If only we could get to the end of all these policies and procedure manuals that we were madly writing in order to establish a new organisation. And if only we could make it to 20 years, can you imagine? And fantastically, we're here today. So that's the experience I wanted to impart to the group today, if only, and we did it, and we're still doing it, and I want to thank everybody. But to answer your question specifically, Alex, I know I should, about IF's name, there's a really lovely piece in the publication at the beginning of the book about our early years and the origins of the name. To be really quick, and Sally tells the story much better than I do, but indigo is a plant cultivated and used by women in Southeast Asia and in many other developing countries. It produces a really rich, beautiful dye that is used to colour cloth and threads for weaving, and that's predominantly a female activity. And I think maybe Lyla, you wrote these words, the plant's journey mirrors a belief in community-led and owned development, which can be messy and slow to deliver, but ultimately is transformational in its impact. So that's what I wanted to impart today. I'd like to hand over to the rest of the panel. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Jenny, and thanks for all that early work. Yeah, volunteering is very rewarding, but it is hard. So thank you so much. Now to Libby House. One of the things that comes through in this book, and it's rare among NGOs, is the very long-term commitment that Indigo makes to communities. And the partnership in Indonesia with Lyla Lemba epitomises this. Libby House has been central to that project and to Indigo for over 15 years as development coordinator and as the first partnership coordinator for Lyla Lemba. And Libby, if I can cross to you now, can you share a bit about the journey of that work with Lyla Lemba from unexpected beginnings to where we are now after 20 years?
Thanks, Alex. And hello, everyone. It's really wonderful to see all these familiar faces and new faces. Jenny, thanks for your intro. It was interesting to hear you speak about the difficulties of some of those early days. And when I was thinking about talking tonight and talking about the longevity of this project and other projects that we have, it was those hard times that came to mind quite often. And I think it was around the fact that when Sally and the other women began Indigo, it was around the fact that development was about people, and yet the sector, the development sector, the large organisations that were working in communities were getting away from the fact that development was about people, and so a lot of time was being spent on log frames and policies and order, I suppose, in terms of control. So when the women of Indigo began the organisation as a principles-based organisation, I think nobody realised quite how demanding that was going to be. We all have very sound principles, and those principles are universal, and our partners also comply with those or subscribe to those principles. But when we undertake to work with principles, often we bring very different values to those principles. So with partnerships in countries, and often our partnerships are in countries that are governed by autocratic governments, transparency is quite challenging, and what might be very obvious to us as being corruption can just be a way of getting things done on a day-to-day basis. And that's the type of difference in values that I think was very difficult for us when we were first working with our in-country partners. I think having worked for long periods of time with our partners, we're given the opportunity to examine those values, and quite often that can be very confronting, and it has certainly led to difficult times. There have been times when our partners have not communicated with us for months on end, and I think that also reflects on the fact that shame is quite often a modifier of community behaviour in the partnerships countries that we work in. And so we've had to develop very strong foundations of trust with our partnerships, and in doing that it's built very solid relationships where we've been able to confront difficult times, different interpretations, different values, and we've been able to work through some very threatening and risky situations, both for us and our partners. And at the same time as we're doing that, a mirror is being held up to our own values and the values that we might subconsciously be bringing into our partnerships. And when the trust has been established, then our partners can talk to us about the mirror that they're looking into as well, which has been held up to them by the work that we're doing together. And so I find that work that Indigo does as principle-based and sharing values is an incredibly privileged way of working. And I think we can only really build on that type of working by making that commitment and developing trust. And it always goes back to those basic principles, but also the fact that one of the early policies of Indigo was that we would sign an agreement with organisations for 3 years. And by giving our partners that surety, they had the confidence that they were going to continue. They had confidence that perhaps they could bring up what they perceived as failures and build the trust that has developed into a very joyful, I think. I don't think anyone would disagree that the way we do development brings a lot of joy. And the fact that we stay with our partners for a long time and sometimes come across frustrations is all worthwhile in the end. Yeah.
And now exiting after 20 years, Libby.
Yeah, we have exited, but I think in the way that we exit, and it's always with the door left open. So when we build relationships, we're not just talking about transactional relationships. We have relationships where, for example, with Roti, we had already decided to exit. But when the cyclone hit Roti, I wasn't working, but I understand Indigo reached out to the organisation we'd been working with and offered assistance to them. I think both with Roti and with Uganda, who we have also exited from, we've always left the door open and always made it very clear that if they were to come up with new proposals or a new idea, that we would be open to listening to them, and if we couldn't help them ourselves, we would help point them in a direction that might be helpful.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for your incredible work, Libby, and we'll read more about it in this book, but thank you so much for being part of this tonight. Appreciate it. And now to Santino Yuot. A story at the heart of Indigo is the connections that have been made in Australia to diaspora communities. And I want to acknowledge that Ali Reza Yunspoor from Afghanistan is in the audience tonight as well. I know Ali Reza well. We did a longer conversation actually, which is still available online on the ABC. But it was actually back to Santino. It was a chance meeting on a bus that put Indigo in contact with Santino. Santino, can you share how you came to be part of Indigo and what you've been able to achieve in South Sudan with Indigo's support? Have we got Santino?
Has to unmute.
Santino, I think you're just on mute.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me to come and join with you this today. I'm very glad to share the story where I met the Indigo Foundation some years back. One of the evening, I went and had a meeting with the START coordinator in Karma, in Fairfield. After I finished the meeting with that person, it was about 6 p.m. and I was to return back to the location where I stay. I was not driving by then. Then the person I went to meet with asked me whether she will look someone to give me a lift to where I live. And then I say, yes, if you get someone to give me a lift, that will be good. Then she went around and then she found Zoo Cunningham. She told her, Santino is going to Auburn, and Zoo said, I can drop him there. So I'm going along that way. Then I entered into the car. Before we reach a distance, I decided to ask her about her name and what she's doing. And then she explained to me what she's doing. And then she asked me, I said, I am doing some work back home in South Sudan. I want to renovate the school. The school during the war was made by the soldiers as a barrack between the South and the North when they were fighting. So when the peace agreement came, then the soldier from the North took away the roof, and the kids are under any roof, with any roof. He said there is a little organization called Indigo Foundation. It's a very small organization. It's not doing much, but I will be able to talk to them, and then I will give you feedback. She went, she talked with some Indigo Foundation official, especially Libby, and then she came back to me and said, Santino, I talked to Libby, and Libby wants to meet with you. I said, that's good. We arranged the time. We met together in Auburn. We talked a lot. And the Libby told me that this is a good project. We can be able to help you. I have given them the photos of the school, and they were really in need to support. Then Libby went back to the Indigo Foundation. She talked with the board, what I am doing. From there, we start interacting, exchange words from each other until 2013. They told me that Indigo Foundation has agreed for you to go to South Sudan and make assessment. Then I went in 2013. That was about 2012, December. Then I went there. I made the assessment. I talked to the people. I met with the teachers. Then I came back. In 2013, at the end, I continued there, and then I met with the people, especially in the Department of Education, and I told them what I am doing here and what I have been doing back home in Northern Barkazal. That is the part of South Sudan state, and the people were really very happy. When I came back, I made a report. I met with Zoo, I met with Libby, and then we talked and I made a report. In 2014, the grant was approved to go and put the roof. We sent the money, the roof was done, the toilets were done, and everybody came to normal. In 2015, when the school finished, then I talked with the Minister of Education of Northern Barzal. I told him, look, we have renovated the 4 classrooms and we have 2 toilets. And I have you to go and see what we have done. The man really went, because he's a friend of mine. He went and saw the school, what have been done. He was happy and said, now, as long as you renovated 4 classrooms, because we don't have any secondary school in the area, about 10,000 people living around there. So it is good now, this one will be a secondary school. So he promoted to be a secondary school in 2015, and the people start registering the student there until the school opened. So from that time, when I received the report back there, then I talked again to the zoo and Libby, and we discussed. And I said, look, this 4 classroom has been renovated, and we can use also as a teacher training during the holiday. We can bring the teacher from different locations and train them for 1 month, and then we send them back. The people agreed, and then in 2017, I went and we start the training in those 4 classrooms. In 2018, we met with the Minister of Education and said, it is good now, we can shift this one to the center where everybody will go there. We went to a Wool State. We had a training in 2018, and we have another training in 2019 and 2020. For those 4 years, we have trained about 340 teachers.
Fantastic.
In different locations. The work that has been done by Indigo Foundation has made impact to the people of South Sudan, especially in Northern Barzal. Up to now, the school is a secondary school, and the community are benefit from that school, and the government also is benefit from that school. There was no secondary school by then, but now the government said it is a good job that has been done by your partner. So we continue to support the school as a government of South Sudan. That is where I come in contact with Zoo, Libby, and Indigo Foundation. And thank you.
Santino, thank you so much. From that initial conversation when being offered a lift to then that ripple effect of all those hundreds of teachers being trained, it's an incredible story. And thank you so much for being part of this launch tonight. Brilliantly tells us what Indigo does from this small little organisation to have such a big effect. Thanks so much, Santino.
Okay.
Our next speaker is Susan Engel. Susan has made a long contribution to Indigo as an academic, wrote much of the early policy in the early days and has served as chair and board member and is now partnership coordinator for our Indian partnerships. Susan, welcome tonight. Thanks so much for being part of this. There's a lovely chapter in the book based on interviews with Annie Namala and Semala Selvi, women's rights and Dalit rights activists. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Great, thanks Alex. Yeah, most of you know we've got 2 projects in India. The one you're talking about is our PEER project, which works with the Dalit community, and that's just south, about 90 kilometres south of Chennai, in a really quite remote rural area. And then Mahalia Sakti, Women's Power, based down in Madurai. And just building on one theme from before, one of the things that makes this partnership so strong is the great local organisers that we work with, the great women, majority women that we work with, who work in an incredibly tough location. India is, I think, I can say, one of the most misogynist places you'll go to, and the women who are the key leaders in our projects, Semala and Annie, Guna and Grace in Mahalia Sakti are tough and brave and incredible. I was hoping that a couple of them might join us tonight, but they haven't been able to. So that's a key factor, having great local partners. The long-term support that's been mentioned before, that's been a great factor too. Change and transformation is not obvious or rapid. It's slow and generational. And in India, where the political context has gotten even more dire for Dalits and non-Hindus, and that's exactly who our projects work with. Mahalia Sakti work a lot with the Muslim communities. The political situation has gotten significantly worse over the past 10 years or so with Narendra Modi and the Hindu nationalist government there. And then I think the third factor for me for these projects that makes them amazing is their connection to broader Dalit and human rights movements. And that gives them a political edge and empowerment edge that perhaps not all of our projects do, though some of them do. So Semala, Guna, Grace, our key partners, they're all part of the National Dalits campaign on human rights. And they take a very political and activist approach to their work, as well as a very hands-on day-to-day role. They're the three things I'd say. And I did want to also say, thank you. Caitlin's on the call. I'm just the latest in a long list of great partnership coordinators. Caitlin was one of them, Pat Duggan and Deb Raphael, who aren't here. And Libby's played a great role in India as well. I'm sure there's others too that I've missed, but thank you to all of those people.
And Susan, I think, you know, what you're saying too goes to the heart of being there and giving the message to our partners of being there for the long haul, even in the toughest of situations. The fact that we stay is so important. Thanks for all the work you're doing. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Alex,
for joining us tonight. And now to Jemma Bailey. Jemma has led Indigo for the past 8 years through a really important phase of growth, and Jemma has written a chapter in the book looking at lessons learned. Jemma, I'll cross to you. Can we reflect on some of those lessons? And then also maybe, you know, if this is about the past 20 years, what's going to go on in the next 20 years?
Thanks, Alex. And it's so very lovely to see you all. In terms of lessons, I think from the early days, we've always known that we have as much or more to learn from our partners as they do, to learn and gain from our partners as they do from us. And in compiling this book over many, many months, I think a couple of lessons really weave through all the chapters. And the first one, I think, is the importance of taking risks. If you look at the range of partners in the book, many don't fit the typical NGO mould. Some are well established, like Club Rafiki in Rwanda. And as Susan was referring to Mahalia Sakti, connected with broader social change movements, but some are much more informal, like Nefulko Farmers Cooperative in Indonesia, and some work in highly fragile environments, like the work that Santino does in South Sudan. So I think our model and the fact that we're independent of government funding means that we can take risks, and I think it means that we actually have the obligation to take risks and support those groups that may otherwise fall through the cracks. But more than who we partner with, I think the stories in this book really show that risk-taking is kind of inherent in our model if we're serious about letting communities lead, and if we're serious about untied core funding, then that means handing over power, and with that comes risk. I think the second kind of lesson that I wanted to speak to that weaves through the book is about the power of unexpected outcomes, and Libby always talked to me about this when she was when we worked together for so many years, about not getting blinded by the details of the activities, but to make room for the unexpected. And the example that really stands out is what Ali speaks so eloquently to, is the school program work in Afghanistan, which started as an education program, morphed into a kind of gender equity program, which morphed into a peace building project, bringing together religious elders and community leaders. And now, in the face of the events over the last few months and the Taliban resuming power, it's morphing again into standing beside our partners to support immediate needs in what is a really dire context. And again, back home, morphing into testing how we can best support refugee rights and resettlement in Australia. And I think that shows, I think, if we're open to these unexpected outcomes and to being flexible in the directions that we take, I think that's where we can see that the powerful change really happens. And looking to the future, taking a leap out of this book to how we'll celebrate the next 20 or 30 or 40 years of Indigo, I feel really excited about the directions we're taking. I feel really excited about the strength of our team and the strength and power of our partners. And I think the decisions that we're making now and that we've been making over the last 5 or so years will see us being more explicit about the importance of gender equity and supporting women leaders. That's run through our work for the whole 20 years. But 3 of our 4 most recent local partners have been women-led and women-run. I think you'll see us pulling back more into the Asia Pacific and opening up a chance to build clusters so our partners can themselves work together and learn from each other. And again, Libby led some really strong work on that in Indonesia. And I think you'll see us more determined to build a diverse organisation in Australia, to build on the richness of that work in Afghanistan and South Sudan, and to expand our work with refugee and diaspora communities here. But most of all, projecting to the future, I'm confident, and I know that as we continue to grow at our heart, that we'll work really hard to remain true to that founding vision of Sally and Jenny and Zoe and Susan and all those people who came before us, and that our values will be the same, that our commitment to the kind of long-term and authentic relationships will be the same, and that the guiding principles will be at the heart of who we are. And so through compiling this book and through the work that we do as a collective and through all of you who join us tonight and who give so much, I know we'll have much to celebrate in another 20 years.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jemma, and thanks for driving and trusting me with this as well, this beautiful book. Are there any questions before did anyone want to come in before I throw to Lyla to wrap us up this evening? Just unmute yourself and go for it if you'd like to ask a question. I can't
Alex, it's Robin Brown speaking. I just wanted to mention the question of the hummingbird, and it was something that puzzled me for quite a while as to why we had the symbol of a hummingbird, and being a bit of an ornithologist, I was particularly interested. It is a species that is only found in the Americas, and that's kind of interesting. It means that, you know, we've got to look elsewhere than home. But the thing about the hummingbird is that it's the most agile of all birds, and it is the only bird in the world that can fly backwards. So I think that's quite a nice little symbol for this organisation, the agility of the organisation. And it's an organisation that is, when it's found that it's not going in quite the right direction, it can go backwards and go and do something else.
Yeah, the book says the hummingbird is small, agile and tenacious. Its beauty lifts the spirits and its adaptability is critical to its survival. And these attributes speak to Indigo Foundation as a small, creative organisation that uses a light touch in its partnership and community development approaches. So hence the hummingbird. Very nicely. Anyone else want to come in before I throw to the beautiful Lyla? No?
Yeah, my question.
Yes.
How can we get a copy of that book?
Jemma?
Get a copy.
Santino, we will give you a copy of that book. Yeah, at the moment, Alex is holding the only living copy of our book. But as I said in the message that went out today, they will be getting printed not in time to get to us and get out before Christmas, but they'll be ready in that week of 10 to start sending out in the first week of January. So I'll send out an email tomorrow about how you would get one.
Fantastic. Well, thanks to all the speakers this evening, and over to you, beautiful Lyla.
Oh, thank you. Not so beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks so much to everyone, and to our panel, and to all of you that have contributed tonight. Before I kind of go through a little bit of formal thanks, I just want to mention very briefly, because we've shared news of this in our publication that's just gone out, but we have with us tonight Louisa Yasukawa, and perhaps Louisa is I just want to mention that Bergman College, which is part of the Australian National University, and Indigo have just partnered for a new Equality Prize, and Louisa was the inaugural winner of that prize. So just to acknowledge that, and thanks so much for being with us. And we note that you did volunteering with Indigo was part of the broad experience that you have that contributed to you winning that prize. So congratulations. I want to just say thank you to all of you, first of all. Everyone that's been online is still online for the part that you've played in Indigo, be it long, short, be it large or small. Those of you who've been involved for a short time know that that turns into a long time, just saying. I want to thank Sally and everyone involved early on, and they've been given acknowledgement tonight that it is so deserving, and to mention in particular Pat, Jenny, Susan and Zoe Manda-Jones. Susan Engel in this case, also Sue Cunningham, who's been involved for a long time, who's on the call. We sat down to what seemed like a time-pressured dinner early last year to capture the founding story, and it was a privilege to be part of that. I want to thank our current partners overseas, our partnership coordinators, staff, volunteers and board members who are actively creating the next chapter of Indigo Foundation's story. So this story very much goes on. So the idea of the book, it actually came about during our planning for the 20th anniversary, which sadly was the first year of COVID. So we all got kind of a little overtaken, and you have in your lives and work, I'm sure, as well. But the idea came up through that planning, and particularly I want to acknowledge Fife Strachan, Jemma, Gwyneth Graham and other board members who were part of the group that did that planning and really birthed, if you like, the idea of the book as 20 stories. I think it's more than that now, but there was a great synergy to that idea. To all of the authors and contributors who I'm not going to mention individually, but it was a big volume of work that's led to the quality book that we have now, and it's rich in the different stories that it presents. So thank you to all of the contributors, and as Santino has anticipated, just get that book and read it, and you will you will benefit from all of the contributions. But there was a lot that went on to and fro to ensure the book was accurate and a good read and a good story. It was a good story, so we had to honour it in the way that we captured it in the book. There were many people who fact-checked for us, who provided feedback on content. Our proofreaders, the main ones were Jemma, Christine Edwards and Jodie Mattaya, who I'll say more about in a moment. And so the work that kind of went on backwards and forwards to get the product that we have now was significant. So thank you to everyone involved in that. So I just want to lift up a few people who've really made this possible. Jodie Mattaya, who's with us. Jodie, are you still with us? Can I see you?
Her internet is playing up. She just sent me a message.
Judy has been with us, is with us. Her internet's unreliable. Judy was editor at large. Jodie was editor at large. She worked tirelessly in a volunteer capacity from the beginning with it, planning, advice, editing and now production. She continues to assist us. She's given a massive number of hours in a busy life that has also included a master's degree, full-time work, and I'm sure there's much more. We couldn't have got here without you, Jodie, and the quality of the book is very much to your credit, and we're grateful. Jemma has also worked tirelessly on the book. She's written for it, she's reviewed it, she's advised, she's edited, and she's coordinated the many people involved to bring the book home. And Nat Lowry, who is also with us. Nat, are we able to see your face? Nat Lowry coordinated and inspired the final layout, and she is also the person who, thank you, there's Nat, who does report for us on Indigo Inc. and annual report. And I know from our supporters that people really value these publications for the information they provide, but also the quality that we see in them. So thanks, Nat. And to Fife Strand, finally, who was part of the ideas group, but she's remained involved throughout on coordination, board liaison, quality control, and much, much more. So thank you to everybody that's been involved. There's too many people to mention. We're really, really proud to have the book, and we really hope you enjoy it when you receive it. Finally, thanks to Alex for tonight, for launching it. Alex was heard to say at a dinner that we had in Canberra last year at the Saffron restaurant that, Indigo, you've got me for life. So there are many people have made that, but when she talks about us and we, I think she's incredibly genuine in that, and we can just be very, very appreciative of having you as part of the community. Thanks for launching the book, for supporting us, and Alex will be hosting together with Virginia Hausiger our dinner, our Canberra dinner next year in March, which we're also very excited about. So thanks everyone, it's been a great evening.
Always Virginia's sidekick, by the way, and it's quite a family to join. If you've let me in, it's you're a pretty marvellous lot, can I just say? So thank you for everything that you've done.
So perhaps we can just have a final hooray, or turn your mic on, hooray, thank you from everybody for the book, celebrate it being there, and look forward to having it in your hands real soon. So hooray, thank you.
Woo! Guys, that's amazing.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.